welcome to Lunch Therapy. I am your host, Joel Marshall. This is Griffith Park Observatory. I did some stand-up there during the eclipse. This was actually taken during the partial solar eclipse that was happening in Los Angeles this week. I'm going to be posting some more stand-up from that. I did some stand-up comedy in the middle of the eclipse. Today, however, is Interview Friday. On this show, we have a Tuesday show where it's more of a variety show. We do some contests and have a lot of fun, talk about animals, talk about the good news that's going on out in the world. Yes, there is some. And today, however, Fridays at noon, we do Interview Friday. Today we have an incredible guest, David Bridel, somebody who his name has come up in my life so much that I was like, I got to get this guy on the show. I don't know if I can, but luckily we got an interview with him. He is the clown whisperer, is what I'm calling him. Good news, says Guignel. Yeah, there's lots of good news out there. Sometimes you have to search for it because it's hidden. Because people don't like to click on things that say, person is friendly to another person. They'd rather see person stabs another person. For some reason, we're intrigued by that. The same way when we drive by an auto accident, we can't help but look because we're fixated on our mortality or something like that. So sometimes it's harder for the happy news, the things that are going on that are great in the world, to rise to the surface, and it makes us think that the world is a horrible, horrible place. And sometimes we miss all the beauty that's going on in the world. Hoy, clown whisperer sounds like it's the same job family as an exorcist. It might be. It might be. Definitely one of the things that David Bridel does is gets the inner clown out of the person who is, this is what I think. People, we walk around and we're trying to be perfect and we're trying to be the coolest person in town, and sometimes we get so uptight trying to fit into these social norms that we forget our sense of play. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. Plus, we're going to talk about all the different aspects of life that involve clowning and what clowning is, and are clowns scary? Because some people say that. Hey, Paige. Great to see you in for a few today, popping in. Let's get into this show. Let's pop into the show. Todd says, if it bleeds, it leads. Unfortunately, not sure that will ever change. Well, maybe it'll change on this show at least. Intro time. I'm gonna get myself a modem. 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 All right. So one of the things I like to do on this show is to promote some of the shows that are going on, live shows that are going on around town. Ginny Sykes, one of our favorites, is going to be in this show. It Might Get Dark. Let's see if we can see what time it is. 8 p.m. Friday, April 19th. 8 p.m. Friday, April 19th at The Crow, which is in Santa Monica. Super cool comedy club that's going on there. The Crow. That is April 19th on a Friday. So check that out if you want to go see that. Plus, Peter Murphy. We had him on the show a couple weeks back. He's doing his show 10 p.m. at Flappers. Check that out. That's tonight. So if you happen to be in town, you're looking for someplace super fun to go, there is one for tonight, and there's one for next Friday night. I want to thank our Patreons. We're getting up to 18,000 subscribers, which is fun. Anybody out there, hit the like button if you're watching this thing. Apparently, that's like a big deal because I see the people with the, lots of followers and things like that, and they're still saying, hit the like button all the time. So I don't want to say that all the time, but it certainly helps. Certainly helps. Guignel says, when is that Joel Marshall guy going to be performing again? That is a good question. I've been working on my material over at the Fourth Wall lately, and that's been super fun. One of my favorite places to go. But I'll be out there again, hopefully soon. I don't know. It comes in waves. Let's get into this thing that's called breathing. Thanks everybody to the Patreons. If you want to become a Patreon, patreon.com/Joel Marshall. Be a part of the therapy. Help us get this out there. Help us reach world domination with our breathing techniques and mind melds. All right, let's move on to the breathing. Okay, we got a big mouth here for the breathing. We got the huge hippopotamus mouth. And that's, if you can open your mouth that wide, that's like 4 feet or something. Please feel free to do so. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it, great timing. Vertus, hold it. Let it go. Vernus is one of my mentors in life, one of my acting mentors. She is one of the original clowns. She was the first female clown in the Barnum and Bailey Clown College. Bravo, bonjour. She is also the originator of the phrase in through the nose, out through the toes, which we will do, in through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Breathe like the hippos. The hippos can hold their breath for something like, I don't know, 20 minutes or something under the water. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Richard Gaddis is here. Amazing singer, performer. Performs at the Saint and Sinner Monthly there in North Hollywood. A posse of hippos. Yes, a posse. Hippos. I love the stork that hangs out on the hippo. Is that a stork or is that a heron? Maybe it's a heron. One more time. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. The heron hangs out on the back of one of the most dangerous animals and the third largest land mammal, the hippo. Richard just had cataract surgery. The hippo images are so darn clear. Congratulations. All right, let's get into some music. Oh, wow, look at that. I love hippos. Egret. Maybe it's an egret. Yeah, could be. Okay, this is ethereal in E. We like to get a little bit of therapy, musical therapy. This guy's one of the most popular handpan players on YouTube. Ethereal in E. I want to say happy birthday to Camila Lopez and Liz Lopez this weekend. They're both having their birthdays. They have them one right after another, mother and daughter. Happy birthday, love you both. Here's a little happy birthday ethereal and E. The guy's adorable. He looks like he lives in the Middle Earth. Yeah, he's a great guy. Check out his YouTube channel, Ethereal and E. He does all kinds of crazy fun things. Mostly outside. And one more musical interlude, and then we're going to get to the interview. This is good. Yep, 39 again. Oh, that's nice. It's your birthday. Thank you. Thank you. I love you. Richard Gaddis. I'm having a big birthday bash celebration show on April 26th. Okay, April 26th. I assume it's at the Satan Center. Richard Gaddis. That'll be fun. So that's Ethereal in E. There you go. Breathing your lunch. Okay, so Akira Sunrise, just an amazing performer from Japan. This is something that's very unusual. I hope you'll enjoy it. You won't see it anywhere else except on this channel. Got to check this out on his YouTube channel. It's just next level. Okay, we got to see what he does in the pool there. All right, so now it's time for the interview. So glad to have David Bridel on the show. This is a pre-taped interview because I think he's teaching class right now, so he couldn't do it like on the Friday. So I sat down with him a few days ago. David Bridel, how did I get to David Bridel? Well, clowns have always been kind of a, I don't know, recurring theme in my life. I think maybe started with J.P. Patches. Yes, I mentioned J.P. Patches yet again, the great clown from Seattle who raised a lot of us grungers. And later on in life, I ran across Bill Irwin. He came to the University of Washington and told us about what it is to be a clown, and talked a lot about utilizing the environment and being in the moment. And that was really excellent. One of the reasons I went to Cal Arts was because of Bill Irwin. Then later on, I met Vernis Clear, who was one of the first female clowns from Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Clown College. I mentioned that earlier. And she really inspired me and still does to this day. She actually has coached Vincent Cassel for many years, and lately they worked on the film, the new Cronenberg film, which is going to be premiering, I think, at the Cannes Film Festival, so check that out. But a lot of her technique involves, physical clowning, or the roots are in clowning, so that's pretty amazing. A lot of us don't realize the effect that clowns have on our society. And a lot of us think that clowns are like scary or whatever, but we don't realize that it just permeates, the clown figure permeates a lot of entertainment. Todd Lee says, I want a job where I perform tricks in a bathtub. Yeah, Akira, Sunrise. Maybe OnlyFans looking for a bathtub performer. I think he's got a lot of fans, hopefully. Then, recently, David Arquette was, I think he's reviving Bozo right now. I keep hearing about clowns. I had Kita Mascaro on the show, and he said that he was taking class from this clown, and he was talking about how rigorous it was and challenging, and how it helps his stand-up comedy. And then my boss at work and friend Mary Marks was telling me she was taking clown class from this guy, and turns out same guy. Then I'm talking to my therapist, and he's taking clown classes, turns out from the same place. And I'm like, wow. And then Kita was talking about how clowns are like going out into war zones and places where you wouldn't expect a clown to be. And actually it turns out it's very helpful, which is amazing to me. So anyway, this is all just very interesting to me. So I reached out to David Bridel. He's on the show. We're going to see him very soon here when I stop talking. But I did want to give you an introduction to him. David is the founding artistic director of the Clown School, of course. He has been working in theater and teaching clown for over 30 years, movement, performance. He has clients working in leading roles in television and major motion pictures, as well as executive clients in theater organizations on both coasts. He's conducted seminars, workshops, courses in clown and movement at universities including NYU, UCLA, Cal Arts, SUNY Purchase, as well as around the world in Romania, Melbourne, Shanghai, Beijing, Brazil, Turkey, Austria, and the UK. He was the dean of the USC acting program for many years. He has also been a clown specialist on ABC's Dancing with the Stars, was a movement director for commedia-dell'Arte. He worked with William Friedkin doing choreography on a production of his. Of course, that's the director of Exorcist. Interesting. He's been writing clown plays, Abraham and Isaac, Sublimity, Lunatics and Actors. Just prolific. Los Angeles Times says Bridel is the real thing, one of the most inventive, scholarly, and vastly challenging voices in the current theatrical scene. So there you go. There you go. Let's see what the chat room says, because I saw some chatting. It's time to send in the clowns. It is. It is time. Where is Blas? Good question. Blas, my co-host, who's still recuperating. Speaking of that, Mike Knox is going to be on the show on Tuesday, guest hosting. Let's get this thing in. This is called Interview Friday with the great clown David Bridel. Welcome to Lunch Therapy, David Bridel.
Thanks, Joe. I don't know what's about to happen, but I'm excited.
It can be kind of scary. But I know that you must be a very, very brave person, because from what I can tell, the clowning world requires a lot of bravery. Would you say that?
Yes. I would say that my students are the brave ones. I jump them through the hoops. But yeah, you're right that clowning is, amongst many things, is a courageous practice.
It is quite the courageous endeavor. I have been hearing a lot about clowning lately. I've been seeing a lot of clowns. One of my internet idols who's been on the show, Seth Word, is a clown. And I didn't realize that he was a clown. I knew that he was doing all these kind of funny things with animals and going on America's Got Talent and doing a lot of physical comedy where I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And it drew my attention. But now when I look at his kind of trajectory, I see that there's a lot of clowning going on. And I see also with comedians. I had Peter Mascaro on the show, and he was talking about how he was taking a clown class from you. And then also my boss at work was telling me, Mary Marks, she's like, I'm taking this class in clowning. And I'm like, what? You are? So can you tell us, is there I don't know, a resurgence of clowning going on, do you think, in Los Angeles?
I do think that's probably the case. Yeah. I'm not sure if I would describe it as a resurgence. I've lived here for 20 years in LA, and I'm not sure that I know much about, what might have come before. When I arrived, improv was king.
Yeah.
And it's certainly true that in the last probably 5 years or so, give or take,
Mhm.
um, the visibility of clowning has changed considerably. My organization, Clown School, is 15 years old now, so that's been, I've been doing my thing since 2009. But I do think that there's been an accumulation of clowning in the last few years, and there are, two highly regarded schools in LA, and then a number of other practitioners who are teaching the art form. And then, of course, perhaps as a consequence of that, or serendipitously, along with that comes, just legions of clowns in performance doing very wacky things.
Yeah. What
So,
would you attribute that resurgence to? Do you think your school had something to do with it? Do you think it's like the times? Uh,
well, it's clowning is a very broad church, right? So
mhm.
it's not specialized, and everyone is welcome, and everyone can gain something from the experience. And I do think that in that respect, it has a similarity with improv. You can be you can be a mechanic or a librarian or a comedian, and you can show up to improv and something will happen for you. That's true for clowning as well. So there's a wide access point.
Mhm.
Different teachers will emphasize different elements, I think, of the kind of the clown practice. Some are very zeroed in on performance. Others are more, like myself, I think, a little more open to the combination of play and personal healing and performance. There's a sort of a trinity there for me. Um, but I just think that there's something about this time that we are living through where people really enjoy freedom on stage or in the spotlight without heavy structure.
Mm.
And although certain clown exercises can have an invisible infrastructure that's very important, um, there isn't a script. There is almost never a script. And I think people are responding to that in
You
drug.
you say there's never a script. One of the things that I've noticed about the clowns that I've seen, and I've just kind of put my toe in the water
Mm,
in recent clowning, is that there's a lot of audience interaction.
mm, mhm.
There's a lot of connection with the audience and challenging the audience as well.
Yeah.
Um, would you say that that is one of the goals of clowning, is to connect with the audience?
I do think that's true. Yeah. I mean, I think clowning, perhaps in answer to your previous question as well, I think clowning is a community endeavor. It's very hard to do it on your own. Um, and uh, and the presence and the participation of an audience is particularly welcomed in the sort of clown milieu. So yeah, I suspect that's true. Now, some audiences really go for transgression and they like it to be as, balls to the wall as possible.
Mhm.
Others might have, different kinds of tastes. It depends where you go and what you're interested in, but clowning can accommodate all of that. It is certainly true that the audience is your scene partner when you practice clowning in a way that
Wow.
not true in other forms, even improv.
Wow. I guess I got my first taste of clowning was watching a television show when I was a kid,
Mhm.
called JP Patches, which was a local clowning show. I mean, there was a clown.
Yeah.
But later on in life, I ran across Bill Irwin. He came to the University of Washington and spoke one time when I was in drama school,
Mhm.
and I was so taken aback by it. And one of his points that he was making was that you've got to use the environment that you're in. And
Mhm.
he was like in a lecture hall, and he started using some of the electronic screen going down and the microphone going up and whatever was going on. He was utilizing that, and that was really inspiring to me. And then later on, I saw him and David Shiner in Full
Sure.
Moon, and largely New York, and they had a kind of a Laurel and Hardy kind of quality about them. One was more mischievous, and the other one was more innocent, I think. do you find, are there archetypes in clowns? Is that something that you talk about in class?
Yeah, we get to that after an initial class, which is more about simply opening up vulnerability, audience relationships, and so on. I do a class which is specifically based on two particular clown archetypes. They kind of come out of the circus, really, the Joey and the Auguste, the high status and the low status clown. And anytime you see a clown or a physical comedy double act, it's very likely that they're going to be, playing with status.
Hmm.
And what should we say, like examining how that yields comedy through relationships. But yeah, the August, which is a German word that nobody quite knows what it means other than idiot, is the name for the low status clown. And the Joey is named after the great British pantomime artist Joseph Grimaldi, who was a incredibly energized and controlling clown figure from the early 1800s. And so powerful was his impact on the practice of clowning that he bequeathed his name to one of these archetypes.
Wow.
Sometimes that's known as the white face clown because Grimaldi was one of the first to actually cake his face in that white makeup that we associate with clowns
Hmm.
nowadays. So it's another word for the same thing, but I prefer Joey. I think it's a more exciting, interesting name for an archetype. Um, and I think you're right in the full moon, which was actually one of my first introductions also to
Really?
kind of contemporary clowning. I was blown away
Mm.
by that. Shiner is the Joey, the very high status, very controlling, somewhat scary actually in his case,
Yeah.
clown. And Erwin is the Auguste, who's much more sort of affable, kind of loser vibe. But of course, both of them are highly skilled physical comedians and they can
Yeah.
pull off anything they want, including switching archetypes if they need to.
I
But
was
yeah,
amazed at how athletic they were. Like, I think I talked to Bill Irwin one time after that show, and I just looking at his neck, even he seemed like he was like a bodybuilder of sorts, because they did so much physical comedy. I suppose maybe that's like a dancer.
yeah. Well, he was in town a few years ago doing his show called On Beckett.
Oh, I saw that. Wasn't that
Yeah,
wonderful?
it
That was
was amazing.
wonderful.
It was
Yeah.
glorious. I visited with him briefly, and I said to him something like, "Well, what are you doing in LA?" Imagining that he'd talk about hiking and sightseeing and what have you. And he said, "Oh, I'm just kind of in the studio most of the time." And I think I remember saying to him, "What are you astronomical?"
Yeah.
For those clowns. Now, it's important to say that that for those folks showing up to clown class here in Los Angeles or even practicing, we all don't need to have that level of ability. That's a rare and kind of Olympic quality. And I do think that if you look back over the last 40 or 50 years, there's been a huge shift in how people approach clowning. It's gone from being an art which includes sort of physical skills to now becoming much more of an art which includes a kind of a point of view or just a perspective
Hmm.
on how to work and how to portray yourself. So it has become more democratic over time.
Do you think so? I'm assuming this is true, but I'm going to ask this anyway. But do you think that it applies for comedians, stand-up comedians to do clown work, improv artists, dramatic actors? Do you have those kind of people come through as
Yeah,
well?
all of the above. And everyone, I think, profits from the vulnerable rawness of the clown experience, which really asks you to kind of start with nothing and share your emotional vibrations with an audience, which can be a little scary.
Yeah.
Um, and I also have a category of student that comes through my school, which I simply call the seekers, who are not necessarily involved in the performing arts in any capacity,
Hmm.
comedians, actors, whatever, but they can come from other walks of life, doctors and lawyers and, travelers and all kinds of folks, teachers, a lot of therapists actually in the recent years. Uh,
Therapists. Wow.
Speaking of lunch
Interesting.
therapy,
Yeah.
uh, because they are interested in some of the other more hidden facets of clowning, which I hope we can talk about, because not only is this a performance art, it's a practice that has ancient origins that is kind of a necessary element of the way that we function in communities and as human beings. So it doesn't always, and it doesn't only have to result in performance.
That's so interesting. You say though that the emotions are raw and you're obviously present in the moment. You studied with Philippe Gaulier, is that right? And there was some talk that I heard about how he eschews some of the acting techniques, the Western acting techniques about, the method and Strasberg and these kind of things. So, and that was maybe because he was making fun of people for getting into their emotions. So I'm wondering where that comes together, because it actually sounds like the same thing to me at this moment.
Yes, and every teacher has their own particular vibration. I think Philippe he wrote a book in which he described himself as the tormentor. That's the name of his book.
Really?
Tormentor. And consequently, much of what he says, in my humble opinion, should be taken with a grain of salt. When I studied with him in the days before the internet, I encountered his school when I came across a little pamphlet, a piece of paper, yay big, which was advertising his classes. And on the front, he'd written a paragraph that said, "Have you studied Stanislavski? It's so boring." And those words immediately became very attractive just by virtue of their provocativeness.
Yes, right.
And sure enough, you wind up in his class and he liberally tosses off insults left, right, and center towards various different acting practices. However,
Yeah.
I was chatting with a scholar and a student who was recently at his school, and she said, she quoted him as saying, "I don't give a shit about your emotions." Fine. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's the legend, right?
Yeah.
But she also described a moment where she was working on Beckett's play Happy Days, and she went into an exercise which brought a great deal of feeling up for her. And the moment she reached that point, Philippe said to everybody, "Okay, get the set, get the costume, get everything ready, because now she can begin." So it's just not true that he doesn't give a shit about emotions. However, what I suspect he's saying is that, don't lead with your self-pity, which is a totally different subject. But
Oh,
it's a
that's
valid point.
interesting. Don't lead. It's interesting too that Brecht also was like saying that everything should be didactic and keep the emotions out, but that some of the most emotion laden moments happen in Brecht plays.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there was like this kind of push against it, but at the same time, it like drew it in somehow. Like you
And
can't do it.
yeah, we just don't operate from a headspace all of the time, or even much of the time. We're emotional creatures, and therefore eventually it has to go there, right? So
Yeah. I
I
wonder
just
if the denial of it somehow brings it in,
I do
you know?
think that's probably true. Yeah, that's right. I
Or
mean,
at
I don't
least a truth. It brings in a truth rather than you trying to generate.
exactly. And that, with method acting and what have you, it's one of the dangers is that, that self-generation becomes a way of creating a feeling that may not actually be relevant or helpful. So yeah, I suspect that there's just different ways of getting to the same point.
Maybe it's a feeling that comes from here. Like
Exactly.
I should be crying because it says
Exactly.
crying. And so
Exactly.
you're like, I better start crying.
Yeah.
And then you're like, how can I manifest that? And then you're just off on a totally different thing than
Yeah, and you're not present.
experiencing
You're
something.
not present.
It seems like Philippe Gaulier is a bit of, like you say, a taskmaster. How do you feel about that as a teaching style? Because
Yeah,
sometimes he seems to like, I mean, he really goes hard on people.
that's right. I think you have to be very careful with that. And Philippe belongs to a prior generation or two,
Yeah.
and I'm not really going to speak about that, but I do know that his legacy has yielded a number of questions about how is it going to be helpful to approach the art of teaching the art of clowning. And what I've come to, which is personal to me, and I don't expect it to be true for everybody else, is that it's okay to step into that taskmaster role as long as it's clearly a parody.
Hmm.
Because really what I'm trying to do in all contexts when I'm in a classroom with students in clowning is to reverse expectations. So, I might yell at somebody only to either encourage them to be more brilliant or to make fun of myself, which is a critical component in the room. It's really necessary that, you know, the traditional structure of the teacher knows and the student must learn can be reversed through the magic of clowning. And I think it's really important to do that.
How important is it as a clown to fail on stage?
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental. I mean, certainly in the laboratory,
Mhm.
clowning is all predicated on failure, and
Mm.
you know the tripping on the banana peel or the pants falling down is just the reverse of the norm, and therefore it yields, you know, the potential for comedy or the potential for vulnerability. And failure is another reversal of our norm, especially in a world where we're all trying so damn hard to succeed and prove ourselves and all of those things. So it's a very vital component of clowning, but only in relation to its opposite. So all failure all the time is not useful, but failure as it
Oh.
helps to round out your humanity is crucial.
Do you put people through exercises that are designed to make them fail?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah,
Funny,
most
I
of
said, well, as I was saying that, I was like feeling like you were going to say no for some
oh,
reason, but you were like, oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
That's all.
definitely.
That's what they're for. They're either too difficult or they're not clear enough, or they're, I mean, or the parameters are just sort of kind of ruthless and you can't possibly manage, or you don't give people enough time. That's a great technique of how to get people in the clown space. You give them some elaborate task and then you give them 1 minute to prepare it. So all of the above and more.
So
It's
funny because when we had Kita Mascaro on the show, I was like, what, how is this, how is it taking these clowning classes? And he says, well, I just learned how much I can't do and how I just am terrible at everything.
yeah.
He's like taking it really personally, like he better get better, better do
Yeah,
this
French
thing.
counting is being really bad at stuff, but that's often the way into it. So, where,
But it seems like an opposite to this lifestyle that we're living here in Hollywood, where it's so competitive and you've got to be like perfect. And how can that play into someone who's like trying to go out and get roles in the next Dune 3 or whatever it is? How can this play into that, do you think?
well, I think if you're asking specifically for, what is the how does clowning help an actor?
Yeah.
Um, I can't really speak to the life component there, but if you're on set or if you're on stage, the wonderful thing that clowning trains you to do is to really accept the present moment in a kind of radical fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we do our best in the realm of acting to kind of enter into a fiction, there is present tense activity going on within that fiction. And it takes us back to the previous part of the conversation, where as soon as you go up into your mind and you're putting your attention on something that you're trying very hard to imagine, then you might lose touch with what's really going on between you and your
So
environment, you and your partner.
that must be something about what Philippe was saying about like, because in method acting, a lot of times you would go back to some kind of past
Exactly.
experience and try and recreate that in the moment, and you're missing out on
Yeah.
everything that's going on presently
In the here and now, exactly that.
in the
So,
here and now.
and of course, the danger of the here and now is that it doesn't go according to plan. And, whether that's to do with the environment, the temperature, your feelings, your partner's feelings, the script, etc. There are so many different possible ways in which the presence can, quote unquote, let you down. But learning to accept it and work with it avails you of a lot more sort of inner space as a performer
Ooh, I
and
like that.
and less judgment.
More possibility.
Yeah, exactly that.
There's
I think
much more possibility in the present than there
yeah,
is in your mind, I
that's
think.
right. And we all of us in our own ways are guilty of planning ahead the way it ought to go,
Mhm.
what will make it be good as opposed to bad. And although a certain degree of that is necessary, it can also very quickly turn into a sort of, mental trap. So clowning works in an opposite way and helps to keep those
You
channels.
said that clowning goes way back as
Mm.
far as in our traditions. Where do you think the origins of clowning, where do you think it began? How did it evolve to now? I mean, it's a
I
big question, but we could probably do it like an entire class on that. But I'd
we
love to
could
hear
indeed. Yeah,
something about that.
I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah.
My view is that in stories, in all stories in all cultures, which are kind of integral part of the fabric of community, there are critical archetypes that show up in stories: the warrior, the priest, the mother, and the trickster is one of those most early and basic archetypes. And you can find the trickster in mythical storytelling from any part of the globe. And tricksters are very strange mythical creatures. They're paradoxical. They stand for sort of good and bad at the same time. They make a lot of mistakes. They're very earthy. They have elements to them that are sort of, how should I say, like the reverse of what the warrior represents. In other words, they help to sort of tease out our capacity to make mistakes and screw things up and what have you. And I think that in mythology, we have the trickster, and in human community, we have the clown.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you, but think about your family, either your nuclear family or extended family. There's probably a clown in there somewhere.
Definitely.
There's
Definitely.
probably someone, who does everything the wrong way round, who is the quote unquote black sheep of the family. And assuming they're doing no harm,
Hmm.
there's a role for that person in every micro community. And of course, then, we extrapolate from that there's a role for that person in the larger community. And in early ceremony, including harvest and wedding, funeral, equinox, all of those things, clowns always used to appear to counter the prevailing narrative that we needed to get closer to the gods. I tend to think of it like this: the clown, in a circus, think of it this way. The circus tent is built like that, right? It goes
Hmm.
up like a church towards the sky.
Yeah.
A great deal of activity in the circus happens up there as we,
Yeah.
with this extraordinary abilities that people develop over years to get to kind of fly, basically, trapeze, tightrope, anything that gets us closer to heaven. But the only figure in the circus that doesn't do any of that is the clown, who
Yeah.
lives squarely in the sawdust. So it's a nice metaphor to help us understand that clowning is a way for us to stay with our feet on the ground, even when our heads want to take us further and further towards, shall we say, a perfect manifestation.
I love that. I always say that, keep my feet on the ground and my head in the clouds. Like
Yeah.
that's my goal somehow.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's the perfect opposite. The way that
Yeah.
clowning was originally described, that I find to be very useful, is that it helps to, quote, balance the cosmos.
Hmm.
So that's its actual function. Its function is to release energies that are counter to the head in the clouds that you just referred to. So,
Oh, that's so interesting. So when did you decide to become a clown? Like you went and took this,
well,
I
I
think you
started with Philippe.
studied with him.
This
Yeah.
was 30 years on, early 1990s is when I
Uh-huh.
encountered. And then I got totally fascinated. I was terrible in his class.
Well, I
And
mean, it sounds like you're set up to be terrible. Like
yeah,
everybody's probably feeling that way, but there must be a lot of people that quit.
yes, that's true too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, he likes it when they quit, I think.
But you like hung in there and you made a life out of it. So I think that's you're
Yeah.
like a unique person.
Well, I feel like first of all, I don't perform a great deal myself. That's, I'm much more interested and much more capable, frankly, as either a director or a teacher or
Mm.
a writer about clowning, which is a paradox in of itself. Uh, but yeah, but after I studied with him, I was just so influenced by the content of the work, but also just his vibe, which was really alarming and hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, so it really got under my skin. So I started teaching it from way too young, and maintained a fascination with it, even though I had a what you might call a more mainstream interest in, theater performance. But eventually it sort of just took on a life of its own. I started the clown school. Things began to accumulate over time, and here I am, thoroughly enjoying and feeling very privileged and lucky that this is a big part of my life. So.
When someone comes to you, what's like the first thing you do with them when they come to class?
In your basic kind of 101 clown class, I do two initial things that get the juices flowing. One is group exercises, usually revolving around the idea that we put together marches of various descriptions. They look and feel a little bit like sort of marching band things where you have 4 or 5 people doing like a marching band. and it's very celebratory and it's very ridiculous and people screw it up all the time and it's hilarious and great fun. So that's one that
Yeah.
really gets the sort of community energy flowing. And then another thing that I do early on is I'll ask one individual to stand in front of the entire group and just kind of reflect on whatever they're feeling in that given moment, which is a somewhat nerve-wracking thing to do.
Yeah.
And that those two counterpoints, the sort of crazy, wacky one on the one hand, and the very intimate, vulnerable on the other, help to kind of scope out the range that we'll be referring to as we move through the whole curriculum together.
You spoke of it being perhaps therapeutic.
Hmm.
Do you think, are there moments in class where people have like these breakthroughs that are more than just in clowning, but also in their lives as well?
Yeah, I do think that's true. I mean, I'm nervous about the official word therapeutic because
Sure. Yeah.
we can't make any claims that would hold water. But what I have observed countless times is that people will cycle in and through the clown classes and then will report on shifts that are happening in their quote unquote day-to-day lives. And they can be very, very simple things about, appreciation and staying in the present and so on. Or they could be a little more profound about the direction in which people are heading and, where they want to think they might want to go next. So the range is complete. And by the way, I don't imagine this is unique to clowning. I suspect that you can go into, a large range of classes and have things kind of light bulbs go off in your life. So
I think that that's true. I think that's true that there, we have this guy on the show from India. His name was Agyat, and he studies a lot of meditation disciplines and things like that. And he said, it really doesn't matter what you do,
mm,
just that you do it, and you will find something there. Whatever discipline it is, whether it's meditation or just running around in a circle or going to clown class or whatever, there's going to be something that's going to happen if you do it on a
that's
regular basis. Yeah.
Yeah, and I more and more I think of clowning as a practice as opposed to opposed to a sort of art form, although there is a tremendous amount of artistry involved.
Yeah.
But in order to accommodate everyone who comes through my doors anyway, I think of it as a practice. I try to call it a practice because that's kind of what it is. I mean, you could say to me, how can I clown today? And my answer would be have dessert before your main course or have breakfast for dinner or get out get out the wrong side of bed or there's
Yeah.
ways to practice this that don't have anything to do with someone paying $20 for a ticket to come and see you. And I like
So interesting. That's
that.
like the guy who was practicing being rejected, and he would go to Starbucks and say, "Can I be a greeter?" And they'd be like, "What? I just want to greet people when they come in the door." We're like, "Okay, do that if you want." But it was such an incredible practice. He had like this massive breakthrough in life, and now it's like his whole career
Right.
is like
Yeah,
rejection therapy.
that's amazing.
That guy is a clown.
Well, that's very much
Yeah.
a clown choice.
We used to do that naturally when we were kids. We had a thing called the Myth Club when we were in high school. And we would like go to McDonald's and we would order like an ice cream cone and then just push it into our face, you know, and just to see what the reaction would be.
Yeah.
Or come back with the hamburger upside down and tell them that you want to return it because it's upside down or whatever. And then they turn it like right side up. Oh, okay.
So, I tell this sometimes to my students, not really academic, but it relates directly to what you just said. So the word clown is a medieval word that, comes out of the English language. And it actually, we think that it's associated with the word clod, meaning a piece of earth. Okay, so that's clown. But there were clowns well before the word clown was coined. And to my understanding, in Native American heritage, at least one tribe's name for their resident clowns was translated into English was contrary as a noun.
Mm.
A
Mm.
clown is a contrary. So ordering an ice cream and sticking it in your forehead or turning the hamburger upside down and returning it, that's exactly what contrariness actually is, right? So
Right.
that's a practice.
Yeah.
And we can all engage in it if we dare or if we're excited or if it occurs to us. And it just helps to kind of expand the fabric of our world a little bit. And clowning has a lot to do with childlikeness.
Mm.
insofar as children, boundaries are more porous and opportunities and possibilities are, well, at least one would hope, a little more open. And of course, as we grow and we mature and we interface with society, things get narrower and more tight and more
They
enclosed.
do, don't they? As
Yeah.
we become adults, we start to squeeze out all that childlike. Sometimes I get down on myself because I'm childish. Like the other day, I made like a film where there was just farting going on through the whole thing. It was like an ad for a place where you could go fart.
Yeah.
And I laughed so hard. In fact, I came up with the concept in the middle of the night because I dreamt of it and woke up chortling to the point where my wife was like, "Are you okay?" She woke up. She's like, "Are you okay?" Because she thought I was crying.
Right.
And no, and I could not stop laughing about it. And then we made the film. And while I was editing it, I was laughing so hard. And then afterwards, I sent it to somebody, and they were like, "Yeah, I mean, third graders are gonna like it." And I thought to myself, wow, I kind of am a third grader. And I don't know whether that's because of the path that I've taken in life, where I'm an actor and a comedian and always trying to find the funny in things, or if I'm just naturally that way. Maybe I was the class clown or the family clown or whatever. But I don't think it's such a bad thing. It seems like almost that's what you're trying to do, is get people back to that.
Absolutely. First of all, there are two crucial parts of the body which matter greatly in your pursuit of clowning. One is the feet, and the other is the asshole. And and that is because they both in their own way represent the opposite to this guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I fully support your flatulence film. And
Well, thank you.
but it's amazing. I went through a phase, certainly as an adult, where I found quote unquote toilet humor to be, I was snobbish about it.
Yeah.
But clowning really helped me just kind of like relax about all of that. I mean, first of all, kids find farting to be utterly
Oh
hilarious
my God.
for
Yeah.
a good reason.
Yeah.
And secondly, yeah, it actually makes sense. It makes sense because, we struggle so hard with trying to be perfect. And I do think, to reflect on earlier parts of our conversation, that is a huge draw for people nowadays who are interested, curious, somehow, magnetized by clowning, because it offers a space for us to practice and welcome and celebrate our imperfections.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece for folks who are we're trained, we're educated, and we're conditioned to be more and more perfect versions of ourselves. And then shame, which has become this,
Oh
giant
yeah.
bugbear in our modern world, is the consequence of failure. So clowning helps to sweep all of that away. It's really amazing.
Is it hard? I remember teaching teenagers acting, and it was really hard to get them to not be cool, like
Yeah,
let go of their cool.
yeah.
Is that something that you kind of work on specifically in the class when you get people in there?
Yes. I mean, I would say teenagers are the hardest group to teach this kind of work to, by the way, because they are they are actually, in some respects, caught up in the future version of themselves that they're striving for. So it's a little bit harder for them to stay in the present moment. And I respect that because I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I'm a bad one. But yeah, I do. I suspect that there's quite a lot of truth in that, and I do think that rediscovering something of our childness through
Mhm.
clowning is a really vital part of the whole enterprise.
Do you is there a difference between the clowning that they do in the circus and the clowning that they do on the stage? Is that a are they different genres, or are they similar? And then also people always think of clowns as like party clowns,
Mm,
like come to a
yeah,
kids party. Are
yeah, yeah.
these different types of clowns, or do people that do a lot of clowning or that are clowns, do they go into these different areas?
I do
Yeah.
think there are different branches on the tree,
Hmm.
and they afford specialization. I think in the circus there still is an emphasis on skills-based clowning. In the theater, there's a lot more space for narrative clowning, theatrical clowning, as it's sometimes described, and also simply the sort of humanistic element of clowning, which doesn't require as many skills, frankly.
Hmm.
And then birthday party clowns are, I think, just a different category. They typically revolve around balloon making and a little bit of magic and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just directed very specifically for that demographic of kids.
Are there people doing clowning out there in the world that we see regularly that maybe we don't think are doing clowning? Like I noticed Philippe Gallier has Sacha Baron Cohen and Emma
Yeah,
Thompson and Roberto Benigni
yeah,
were some of his students.
yeah.
So do you think that's going on and we don't even see it as clowning, but we react to it the same way?
Well, yes, in some ways. I mean, it could be argued that last 50 years of American comic movie culture includes tons of clowning. Will Ferrell is a wonderful Joey. He's a great high status idiot clown in films like Anchorman and what have you.
Yeah.
But nobody ever uses that word in relation to him. Think of him as a comedian, not so much as a clown. So the definitions are a little flexible, but yes, in that respect, when you look at performance, when you see people who are sort of physically goofing around, Jim Carrey, another great example,
Yeah.
also just prepared to make a complete idiot of themselves, that's definitely the clown gene is at play there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, in our own sort of local social units, we often have clowns that we don't think of.
Right. They're actual clowns just
Yeah,
living amongst
exactly.
us.
Living
Sometimes they
among
don't even know they're clowns.
beware.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. But there's another area where clowning is practiced, which I think must be discussed in this conversation, which is in the realm of humanitarian work.
Oh my gosh, this is what really sparked me when I was talking to Kita. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
So tell us about that. Yeah.
Well, just broadly speaking,
Yeah.
there I think are sort of three critical areas of humanitarian clown work. One is in hospitals, one is in refugee camps and other areas of displaced people, sometimes in war zones. And then there's also activist clowning, which is kind of incredible, where, we're talking about clowns on the streets pursuing some version of social change through their own
Yeah.
bizarre activities. And there are multiple examples in all of these areas, but let me just give you one just to whet the appetite. So I talked to a man in the Ukraine who started out as a hospital clown. And his practice at that time was to go into wards with children, and just bring some illumination and some life in that area. There would be typically some magic or sort of little games that he would play and what have you, and very beautiful, tender stuff. And there's some remarkable scholarship being done around medical clowning that is really, really interesting. However, in the case of this guy, Russia invaded. So what does he do? He gets in his little clown van and he starts traveling to the eastern part of the country and picking up people who have been bombed out of their houses and driving them back to the West in order to save their lives. And he has to sort of leave his medical piece slightly to the side, and he becomes what effectively a refugee clown within his own country. So sometimes he'd make that journey of hundreds of miles a couple of times a day. He would rescue people who were disabled or in wheelchairs who couldn't be taken by others. He had someone die in his van as he was driving it back to Kiev or somewhere in the West. There's all kinds of really challenging things happening as he's interfacing with these people. And then I think that took up a period of many months, and then there was less of that activity of rescue, and he became much more involved in visiting the refugee shelters where these people were congregated. And I said to him, "Did you do tricks? Did you do shows? What do you do in that context?" And he says, "No." He said, "People want to be hugged.
Wow.
They want someone to look them in the eye and bring them back into the present moment because they're traumatized by what's happened in their recent past." And I began to understand that the vision of the clown in this context is not one who is, able to cause ripples of hilarity wherever they go, but rather as a kind of a central or focal point for other people's challenges, pains, traumas, difficulties, and as a kind of a venue in which that can be filtered. And this particular man, he says to his clown troupe, he has a small troupe of clowns he works with, he says, "We're like the toilet of our country. We take everybody's shit and we flush it away."
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful
Isn't it
statement.
amazing? And so,
So beautiful.
this kind of thing is happening much more than you would believe. There's Clowns Without Borders, which is a relatively large organization with many chapters around the world. The US chapter is quite large, and those clowns will visit, God, they're in the Middle East, they're in Syria, they're in Colombia and South America, they're in the Ukraine. They're just all over the place in the most difficult of environments, and they're
And
bringing
they're dressed as clowns too?
yeah, they dress as clowns. Yeah. There's a wonderful organization called the Flying Seagull Project in the UK, whose clowns dress as kind of punk Dickensian pirates. They're totally just they're mad. They have giant beards. It looks like ZZ Top has sort of mated with Bozo, and their love child is this group who go around and they deal a lot with refugees from North Africa. So they're in those Greek islands where there are a lot of people congregated, teaching kids how to play, bringing them play, because the one thing that they've lost as they've been transported and shoved around is probably one of the most essential human endeavors, which is to play.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and there's all like we had Joel Jeske on the show, clown in New York. He goes to the hospitals and it's just I at first when I saw the movie Patch Adams, I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
This is a serious thing. They can't be doing that.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? But it's totally it is healing. I know also I used to be Bugs Bunny at Magic Mountain and
Oh,
when I was at Cal Arts for years. And one of the things you provided was just hugging people. And I used
yeah.
to go on these specials and I went and I remember Little Richard was playing and he saw Bugs Bunny and ran over to me and just hugged me. And you could just see so much joy in just this experience of hugging Bugs Bunny that you really felt like you were doing some kind of, service to the
Well, you are.
community, which I think it
You are.
is. I think it
Yeah.
is. It's kind of one of my favorite jobs I ever had, even though it was kind of grueling to be out in the
Right.
desert in a
In the
fur costume.
sweating under that thing.
But I look back on it and I go, that was kind of good. Six
Yeah.
dollars an hour or whatever. Uh, you know?
Yeah, but you were passing the love. Did you know that Bugs Bunny is perhaps one of the great 20th century tricksters in fiction? Like
Really?
Bugs Bunny actually fits the trickster archetype perfectly.
Yeah, he's great.
Constantly, wheeling and dealing and scheming, and sometimes comes out on top, sometimes comes out on the bottom, and is a kind of a life force, right?
Yeah. And everybody knows him, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that was the thing at the Magic Mountain, like kids and adults and everybody knew this Bugs Bunny. It was
Yeah.
harder to be Wile E. Coyote, I'll tell you though. Because everybody knows him and they know he's indestructible.
Bad guy.
Indestructible. But he's indestructible too. So you can do whatever you want to him,
That's
blow
right.
him up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. This has been really inspiring. I have to end the interview because we've run out of time, but this
Sure.
has been so great.
What a pleasure. Thank you for all the wonderful questions and your, ceaseless curiosity, which is obviously makes your whole program really tick over. So,
Thanks.
well,
I try and find people that are interesting to me
yeah,
for the show.
yeah.
And I find that everyone else is interested as well because there's something there. Also, somebody, Jeffrey Tambor, the actor, said to me years ago, he said, it's not about being interesting, it's about being interested.
Yeah.
And I always try and pass that along to people because I think it's true.
Yeah, that's right. It helps your acting and it helps your life.
It helps your life too, because you're not like thinking about yourself all the time.
No,
Oh my
that's
God,
it.
am I wearing the right thing? What's going on? It's like, just get it off of you. Just get it off of you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thanks so much, David. This has been just a joy.
Great
And
pleasure.
hope to take one of your classes soon.
Please do come
All
by.
right, cool.
All right.
All right. That was the interview with David Bridel. A lot of great stuff in there, I think. Please share this interview around with people. Hit the like button, subscribe. So happy, so thankful to have David on the show, and so thankful to have everybody in the chat room checking this out. Thanks, Bob Kirk. Yeah, I think all of us can learn something from a clown and release our inner clown. If you ever want to do that with David Bridel, the Clown School is available here in Los Angeles. Theclownschool.com. Yeah, what a cool dude, right? I mean, wow. sometimes I say, something about clowning to people or about clowns, and they're like, I'm afraid of clowns. And I'm like, you have not met this guy. Too cool, dude. Thank you. I'm like, I just had a really good time. I got a really fun dance break for y'all. So let's get into that, of course. All right, dance break. Again, here's the eclipse. Don't look directly at the sun. You might burn your retinas. But Jason Edelman, yeah, all right. It's so great having everybody watching this, and hopefully, it'll go circle the earth and build some more clowns out there in the world. More respect for clowns. One of the other things I want to mention, we had Joel Jeske on the show early on. Check out that sometime too. Amazing master clown as well. And we'll have more. We'll have more clowns. Speaking of clowns, we're going to have Mike Knox on the show, guest hosting this Tuesday. Lord knows what's going to happen there. Press the like button, please. Let's dance now to one of my favorite songs. Very inspirational song, sung by an amazing performer. It's time for the dance break. This is incredible. I don't have to tell you because you'll witness it.